This was the last recording before the search team vanished. No trace of their bodies. No evidence of where they went. Only this sound, echoing through the trees, as if the forest itself was alive, and calling to them. For decades, hikers, hunters, and entire expeditions have entered these woods, and never returned. Authorities call it a series of accidents. Locals call it a curse. But those who've heard the recordings swear it is something far worse. The screams do not fade. They do not belong to one voice, or two. They layer on top of each other, dozens, sometimes hundreds, all crying out at once, trapped in an endless echo that the forest carries from tree to tree. What you're about to hear is not folklore. It is not a campfire story told to frighten children. This is evidence. Collected. Archived. And never explained. And tonight, we'll follow those who dared to enter, and never walked back out. They call it the forest that screams. A stretch of woodland so deep, so dense, that daylight barely touches the floor beneath its canopy. Travelers who pass the outer trails tell of voices carried on the wind, voices that call their names, draw them off the path, and lead them deeper, until they are never seen again. The legend has endured for generations. Locals whisper that the screams are the cries of those who never returned, trapped forever between the trees. The forest, they say, remembers every soul that enters. And sometimes, it speaks back. Over the years, hikers have disappeared. Entire search parties have followed, and vanished. Families left with nothing but fragments, an abandoned tent, a torn journal, a recorder left running until the batteries died. In the stories you're about to hear, there are survivors, but very few. Their testimonies are fractured, uneasy, and filled with details that no one can explain. Others left only evidence, tapes, photographs, and the final moments of their voices captured in static. Tonight, we will retrace those accounts. We will follow the maps, read the journals, and listen to the recordings that remain. But be warned, this is not a simple legend. Every detail leads to the same unsettling question: what is waiting inside these trees? Stay with me until the very end, because the final recording, the one found at the edge of the forest line, might explain everything. The forest itself has no official name. Maps mark it only as an unbroken expanse of green, stretching for miles across rugged terrain. Few roads lead near it, and those who travel close often describe the same thing, a sense that the land itself resists being crossed. Thick undergrowth chokes the paths. Trees grow so tightly together that light filters through in broken shafts, turning the ground below into patches of shadow and brief flashes of pale sunlight. The soil is damp. Moss climbs the trunks in heavy layers, as if time itself stopped moving inside. Locals avoid it. Even hunters, men and women who have spent lifetimes tracking game across wilderness, refuse to step inside once the sun begins to fall. They warn newcomers, never enter after dusk. Their voices harden when they say it, as if repeating a rule carved into their memory not by superstition, but by fear. In the villages that border the woods, people whisper of a presence known only as the Whispering Shadows. Some believe these shadows are the lost, those who stepped into the forest and were never seen again. Others claim it is older, something that has always lived there, feeding on those who dare to cross its threshold. What makes the forest truly terrifying is not what can be seen, but what cannot. Once inside, silence presses down in a way that feels unnatural. There are no insects buzzing, no birds calling overhead, no rustle of small animals in the brush. Only the sound of your own breath, your own heartbeat, and, sometimes, something faint, carried on the wind. A whisper. A name. Those who speak of it describe the air as colder beneath the trees, as though the canopy holds not only the darkness, but a chill that sinks into the skin. And the deeper you walk, the heavier it feels, as though each step takes you farther from the world you know. For centuries, travelers have told of losing their way, compasses spinning wildly, landmarks shifting. Entire groups swear they walked in circles, even as they pressed forward in a straight line. And always, when night falls, the first screams are heard. But what is the forest? A place? A curse? A living entity? Or simply the imagination of those already lost inside? That question remains unanswered, because to this day, very few have returned to tell their story. Would you dare step inside, even for one night? The first written reports of the screams date back more than a century. Travelers passing near the edge of the forest claimed they heard voices drifting from within. Not just random cries, but their own names. Spoken clearly. One man, a trader moving goods between villages, described hearing his mother's voice, though she had been dead for years. Another, a soldier who crossed the outer paths during wartime, claimed the forest called to him in the voice of his daughter. Both swore they never stepped inside, yet both admitted they felt, pulled toward it. Most who spoke of these sounds never returned. But there are rare accounts, from those who survived. One of the earliest comes from a man named Daniel, a woodcutter. He entered the forest at dawn, ignoring the warnings, determined to gather timber no one else would risk. Hours later, he said, he heard a child crying. A boy's voice. He followed it. Step by step. Each time he thought he was closer, the sound moved deeper into the trees. He called out, but no answer came, only the same weeping, echoing between the trunks. When the crying suddenly stopped, Daniel realized he no longer knew where he was. The path behind him was gone. The light above dimmed. Silence pressed down, so heavy he swore he could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. That was the last he remembered. When he awoke, he was lying on the ground at the edge of the forest, miles from where he had entered. His arms and legs were scratched raw, as if he had run blindly through thorns. His clothes were torn, his hands caked with soil, though he had no memory of digging. And worst of all, the crying still rang in his head. He swore he could hear it, faint, even when he was far from the trees. For the rest of his life, Daniel never returned. He warned others, repeating the same phrase, "The forest cries to you." But what cries inside, is not a child. What would you have done? Would you have followed the sound of a crying child into the dark, or would you have turned back? Stories like Daniel's appear again and again across generations. Voices calling in familiar tones. Names spoken with precision. Cries that draw the living deeper, until they too vanish into the silence. And yet, these are only the first accounts. As the years passed, the reports grew darker. Louder. More violent. The screams no longer sounded human, but something trapped, desperate, and furious. By the early 20th century, records show a rise in disappearances along the forest's outer trails. Families reported loved ones who never returned. Search teams combed the area, marking trees with chalk, leaving ropes to trace their paths. And still, they vanished. Newspapers began to report the stories, often buried on the back pages. Headlines spoke of missing hikers near old woods or young couple lost in wilderness. The official explanations were always the same: accidents, poor navigation, wild animals, exposure. But those who lived near the forest knew better. They whispered a phrase that has never changed: even now, the forest does not let you leave. The reports detail strange evidence left behind. Tents abandoned, food untouched, as though the occupants stepped out for only a moment, and never returned. Compasses found lying broken, spinning wildly even when still. And sometimes, worst of all, audio recorders. One tape recovered in the late 1960s still survives in fragments. It begins with static. Then, the voice of a young man, steady at first, describing the darkness. He mentions hearing something moving outside the tent. He calls out. And then, the screaming begins. Layered. Endless. A sound so overwhelming that the recorder shakes, distorting under the force of it, before cutting to silence. No bodies were ever found. Only that tape. Others were less fortunate. In some searches, torn scraps of clothing were discovered, dragged across the forest floor. In one, a journal was found, its final page scrawled with words repeated again and again, "They are calling. They are calling. They are calling." The handwriting becomes jagged, almost unreadable, as if written in terror. Still, authorities continued to dismiss the reports. Officials labeled the forest as dangerous terrain, prone to accidents. Files were closed, cases marked unsolved. Families were left only with silence, and the growing fear that something unnatural had taken those they loved. And yet, the whispers never stopped. Each disappearance fed the legend. Each abandoned campsite deepened the fear. The locals say it simply, without question, the forest does not let you leave. But here is the question for you: if it were your family, your child, your brother or sister, would you keep searching in those woods, knowing what was waiting? Or would you turn back, and accept the forest's silence? The stories of the forest cannot be separated from the legends of the whispering shadows. Across the villages that border these woods, the tales are the same. Elders speak of voices in the night. Names whispered through walls, across fields, carried by no wind anyone could feel. Children were warned never to step too close to the trees after dusk. Not because of wild animals, but because of the shadows that lived inside. Shadows that followed. Shadows that spoke. The legend is simple, but terrifying. Every scream heard within the forest is the voice of someone who never returned. Their cries do not fade with death. They become part of the place itself, woven into the bark, the soil, the air. And those who enter, risk joining them. For many years, this was dismissed as folklore. A way to keep children from wandering too far. But then came the testimony of a man who stepped inside, and lived to tell what he heard. His name was Elias, a shepherd from a nearby settlement. He claimed the forest called to him one night, whispers on the wind that seemed to beckon him closer. Against every warning, he followed. He described the air as colder with each step. The trees pressed closer together. His lantern flickered, though no breeze touched the flame. And then he heard them. Not screams this time. Whispers. Dozens of them. Not outside his ears, but inside. He swore the voices spoke secrets from his own past. Words no one else could have known. A childhood memory of nearly drowning. A lie he once told his brother. A dream he had never told anyone. The shadows whispered it all, as if they had been there, watching, waiting. Elias said his legs froze. His skin burned with cold. He tried to run, but the whispers grew louder, circling him, tightening until it felt as though his skull itself would split. And then, all at once, silence. When he stumbled back into the village, hours had passed. His lantern was gone. His hair had turned streaks of white. And from that day until his death, he swore he still heard them, low, steady, whispering to him in his sleep. So what are they? The souls of the lost? Fragments of human memory, bound to the soil forever? Or is the forest itself alive, listening, learning, and speaking back in voices stolen from those who enter? What do you think? Are the shadows real, or is it the forest itself that remembers? Among the most disturbing artifacts recovered from the forest are the recordings. Small handheld devices, left behind after their owners never returned. Many are too damaged to recover. Others reveal more than anyone could have expected. The first begins with nothing unusual. Static. Wind pressing against the microphone. But listen closely. That scream does not belong to anyone identified. No names. No missing persons confirmed. Just a voice, crying out from nowhere, swallowed by the trees. Another recording, recovered from a missing hiker's backpack, begins the same way. Calm. Steady breathing. The crunch of boots on damp soil. Then, something closer. The hiker never responds. The tape ends in static. No further sound. No sign of struggle. Only silence. Then there is perhaps the most unsettling fragment of all. A recorder found near a collapsed campsite. The firewood still unburned. The food untouched. The tape begins normally. Laughter. Voices. A group of friends speaking softly. But within minutes, the laughter shifts. Their voices lower. One of them says he hears something in the trees. Another laughs it off. And then, the screaming begins. Every voice ends the same way. Sudden cut-offs. No explanation. As if something pressed against the stop button in that very moment. No bodies were found at the campsite. No footprints leading away. Only those recordings, left behind like warnings, etched into magnetic tape. And these are only fragments. Small glimpses into what lies deeper inside. Stay till the end, because the final recording, the one found at the very edge of the forest line, is unlike anything else. And once you hear it, you may never forget it. Not all who entered the forest were reckless travelers or curious wanderers. Some were professionals. Search teams, trained and equipped, sent with one purpose, to bring the missing home. But even they did not return. In the late 1980s, an official search group of 7 men and women entered the forest. Their mission was to track down 2 hikers last seen days earlier. Unlike others before them, they carried radios, detailed maps, survival equipment. For the first 24 hours, everything seemed normal. Day 1. Clear updates. Calm voices. A routine operation. But by the second night, something changed. The team reported whispers moving through the trees. They described the voices as close, circling the perimeter of their camp, though no one was visible. At first they tried to dismiss it. Nerves. The wind. But each member swore the voices used their names. By the third day, the transmissions became fractured. One recording survives. Static for nearly a full minute. Then, a single word breaks through the noise. Spoken urgently. Almost shouted. Run. After that, nothing more was heard from the team. Their radios fell silent. No further signals reached the base. Days later, when a second search was sent, they found no bodies. No gear. No signs of struggle. But they did find something. Scattered along a dry creek bed, pages torn from a journal. Written in uneven script, the words repeat again and again, the screaming trees. The screaming trees. The screaming trees. The ink runs where the writer's hand pressed too hard. One page ends mid-sentence, the pencil snapping as if broken in haste. That was the final entry. No name was signed. So I ask you, if you stood in the dark, surrounded by voices calling your name, would you follow? Or would you run? Dozens vanish. Radios cut to static. Screams echo through trees that should be silent. But what is happening inside this forest? Over the years, researchers, locals, and survivors have offered explanations. Some grounded in folklore. others in science, and still others that defy both. The first theory belongs to the realm of the paranormal. Many believe the forest is haunted, a graveyard of restless souls. The screams, they say, are the cries of those who vanished, spirits unable to leave, doomed to call out for help that never comes. Some accounts go further. Villagers speak of a curse, one that binds every soul that enters after dusk. Once the forest knows your name, it keeps it. And once it keeps your name, it keeps you. Other paranormal theorists suggest something stranger, a loop in time itself. Survivors who escape describe missing hours, even days. Watches stop. Compasses spin. Some insist the forest traps its victims in a cycle, endlessly repeating the moment they hear the first scream. Those screams, they claim, are echoes of people caught in that loop. People still reliving their final moments, over and over. Others search for a scientific explanation. One of the most compelling involves infrasound, sound waves too low for the human ear to consciously detect. When exposed to infrasound, people report feelings of dread, sudden panic, even the sense of a presence lurking nearby. Could the forest be a natural chamber, amplifying these frequencies? Another theory points to natural gas leaks beneath the soil. Certain gases, when inhaled in small amounts, can cause disorientation, hallucinations. Even the perception of voices or screams. Add to that the dense canopy blocking sunlight, the cold that lingers even in summer, and it creates the perfect conditions for confusion, fear, and mistakes. To officials, that's enough to explain the disappearances, accidents caused by panic, missteps, and exposure. Then there are the oldest explanations of all, whispered in folklore. For centuries, elders have said the forest is not just a place, but a living entity. Breathing. Watching. Feeding. To them, the screams are not hallucinations, but the forest itself. A lure. A trap. A way of pulling the living deeper into its roots, to join the others who came before. So which explanation do you believe? Spirits of the lost? A time loop trapping souls forever? Science, sound waves and gas seeping from the earth? Or is it older, darker, a forest alive, hungering for those who wander too far? The truth might be a combination of them all. And that possibility is perhaps the most terrifying of all. This was the last tape recovered from the forest. It begins as most of them do, static, faint distortion, fragments of wind moving through the microphone. At first, it is almost ordinary. But within minutes, the sound changes. And then, it never stops changing. Listen carefully. Do you hear it? The voices, layered beneath the static. One moment, it's a man. The next, a child. Then, something else. This continues for 3 minutes. Screams blending with whispers. Voices calling names, sometimes the names of those already reported missing. And then, it happens. And then, nothing. That was the last sound captured. The recorder was found at the edge of the forest, half buried in dirt, its batteries drained, as though it had been running for days. But if that was the final recording, what happened to those who made it? No bodies were ever found. No footprints led away. Only the tape, and the silence that followed. To this day, the forest stands. Untouched. Its boundaries unmarked on most maps. Locals refuse to step foot inside after nightfall. And those who dare, those who wander too close, say the screams can still be heard, carried on the wind. If you ever find yourself there, listen closely. Because the forest always screams. Wait. Did you hear that? Some say it's alive. Some say it's only stories. But the truth is yours to decide. Do you believe the forest is alive, or are these just tales told in the dark? Comment below and tell me what you think. And if you want more accounts of the whispering shadows, subscribe. Because the next one might be worse.